In Excel, you can work not only with data you have entered directly there, but also with data coming from external sources. This includes text files. Text files are one of the simplest ways to store data that can be read by many applications. They have been in the computer world for ages. The advantage with text files is that they are readable even through a standard text editor application like Notepad, so this is a very versatile file format. The disadvantage is, of course, that data is stored in plain text, and there are quite a lot of other limitations or considerations to have in mind. Let's start with how a text file with data can look like. There are basically two ways data can be stored in text files: delimited files and fixed width files. Data in both types of text files is stored in the same way, but in delimited files, fields are separated by a predefined character, whereas in fixed width files, fields have a defined length, so they always appear in the same place. The advantage with delimited files is that they are smaller than fixed width files because each value takes exactly the space it needs, whereas in fixed width files, fields always have the maximum amount of space provided for them, regardless of how much space the value stored in it requires. The disadvantage with delimited files is that they may be more difficult to read compared to fixed width files, which are much easier to see through. Additionally, values in both types of fields can be included in quotation characters. Usually this is the double quotation character. Delimited files are often called CSV files and are often stored with .csv file extension. This is interesting because CSV stands for comma-separated values, but in reality, it is often different characters that separate values in these files. For the purpose of this video, we will use a file downloaded from UN Data, an internet-based data service which brings United Nations statistical databases. These files are downloaded as a .csv files, but for the sake of the demonstration, we will first change their extension to .txt in order to observe different Excel behaviors. If you open that file, you can see it is a comma-delimited file. Additionally, it has an extra line before the column header line. If you open your file by choosing Excel from Open With menu, or if you drop it into Excel from File Explorer, you will notice that Excel loads data from the file, but everything is loaded to column A, as if all values in the file were only one field. You can still read the contents of the file, but it is difficult to work with it. There are three ways to solve the problem with how Excel works with text files. The first way is to change the file extension from .txt to .csv. This can of course only be done if your file is a delimited file. It will not work for fixed width files. If you do this and open the file with change extension, either through Excel's File Open option or simply by double-clicking on it in File Explorer, you will see that Excel opens it and automatically tries determining which character is the one that separates fields. This option will suffice for most cases, but will require you to potentially adjust data in Excel. The second way is to use Excel's text import wizard. If you go to Excel and click on File Open and navigate to where the file is, you will not be able to see it at first. That's because Excel by default filters files to show only Excel files. Interestingly enough, this includes not only .xlsx and .xlsm files, but also .csv files, which eventually are not Excel specific, but Excel simply registers this file's extension as its own in the system. However, if you change the filtering criteria to text files, you'll be able to see the file. This will open a three-step process in which you will have to define for Excel how data in your file looks like. First, you will have to select whether your file is a delimited or a fixed width one. In our case, we have a delimited file, so we choose this option. Then you are also able to select from which row Excel is supposed to start importing data. This is usable in cases like this one, where the text file has an extra header line before the data actually starts. Normally, data import starts at the first line, but we need to start importing data from the second line in order to get over the first header line. When you have defined which line should be the first one to be imported, you have to also specify something that Excel calls for file origin. This is a bit misleading field name because Excel actually wants you to select the code page or encoding in general used in the file. What is a code page goes beyond the scope of this video, but suffice to say that Excel tries determining the right code page itself, and it usually does a good job. Even if it selects a strange code page, the data is imported correctly. Should you see in the preview at the bottom of the dialog that your data looks strange, then you know that you may need to select a different code page. Then, lastly, you have to define whether your file has headers or not. In this case, the headers refer to column names in the file. Our file has headers, so we need to put a tick in this box. If you then click Next, you will go to the second step of the wizard. Here, you need to specify what character is the delimiter. Excel defaults to tab, so if your file has a different delimiting character, you will have to change it here. Our file is delimited with commas. Please note that you also have the possibility to define your own delimiting character in case one different than tab, semicolon, comma, or space is used. Here you can also define if you want consecutive delimiters to be treated as one. This option is used very seldom. And also define text qualifier character in case text data in your file is included between such characters. In our case, it is the double quotation mark that we have to select. Please note that as you make your selection, the data preview part at the bottom of the dialog updates to reflect your changes and to show how your data will look like after importing. In the third step of the wizard, you can, for each column, define what data type values stored in the files have. You can skip through this step and leave all fields defined as general. This will make Excel try to interpret the imported data the best it can. But if you want to avoid issues with data after import, especially when it comes to dates, it can be a good idea to define field data types here. Simply click on the column you want to define in the data preview and then define whether it should be treated as general, text, or date data type. You can also decide not to import this column. It will be ignored. When you click on Advanced, you can also define the decimal and thousand separator, as well as indicate whether your data has trailing minus signs. When you're ready, simply click Finish to load data into Excel. Both these ways open the text file for editing. This can be an advantage, but also poses some risks. The advantage with this approach is that changes you make to the imported data in Excel will be reflected in the text file if you save your changes. Also, if you save the file and then change it in another application and reopen it in Excel, you will see the latest changes, but you will have to go through the text import wizard again. The disadvantage is that if you make some changes, for instance by skipping one of the columns while loading data, and then save the file, all of these changes will be reflected in the source file, which may result in data loss or data corruption. Additionally, Excel will by default save the file as a fixed width file, so you can be surprised to see your CSV file be converted to a fixed width one, so be careful. You can go around this problem by simply saving your imported text file as an Excel file. You are even prompted to do so by Excel. If you do so, Excel will save the data in a new file that will be disconnected from the original text file, so any changes you make will only be visible in the Excel file, and if the underlying text file is changed in another application, you will not see the changes. But the advantage is that you can freely manipulate data in your new file without the risk of damaging the source file. The third way to open text files is to creating a data connection to the file. This can be done from the Data tab in the menu. You can trigger it either by clicking Get Data from File from text/CSV or by clicking directly on the From Text/CSV button. This will bring the Open File dialog with pre-selected filter on .prn, .csv, and .txt files. When you select your file, Excel, or rather PowerQuery, will try to determine the structure of the file. It will do a better job than the import text wizard. It will also try detecting data type for each column. You can define here if it should be done only based on the sample of the first 200 rows on the entire data set, which can take some time if your file is big, or if it should not be done at all. This way of opening text files gives you the full robustness of PowerQuery, including its data transformations, which can be a great help in many cases. We will discuss PowerQuery in our other videos, so be sure to check them out later. For now, we will load the data to Excel as it is. The advantage with this way of opening text files is that data is loaded to an Excel table, so you can use the related functionalities directly. This is, however, a new Excel file, so you have to save it separately. Excel also creates a data connection to the underlying text file. This allows you to refresh the data in your Excel file, so you'll be able to see all changes made to the underlying text file. You can also set the connection to be refreshed automatically when the Excel file is opened or after a period of time. It is important to remember that this way of opening text files creates a one-way connection, which means that you can refresh data in your Excel file to see the latest changes in the text file, but changes made in Excel will not be reflected in the text file. They will be reversed when you refresh the data next time. This is good if you want to keep the underlying text file intact, but can be an issue if you want to change the data and save it back to the text file. There are more operations that can be done when opening text files, but they are beyond the scope of this material. Be sure to check our future videos to learn more on this topic and other questions related to Microsoft Office.